If you had Archimedes' dial, where would you want to go?
Home. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is a movie. This is the first Indiana Jones movie not directed by Steven Spielberg or written by George Lucas, and is the last Indiana Jones movie. I was not excited for this movie, mainly because the original creative leads were not involved, and also the current track record of Disney's Lucasfilm. Indiana Jones is one of my favorite franchises, and Raiders of the Lost Ark is my favorite movie, and Temple of Doom sometimes takes that spot depending on the day.
Prepare to meet Kali in hell!
I absolutely love these movies. The sense of adventure, the heroism, the fun, the action, the horror, the romance, the mystery, and the wonder. But I was not excited for Dial of Destiny. At best, I was cautiously optimistic. James Mangold is directing this one, and I have not seen his full filmography, but the movies I have seen from him I quite enjoy. Harrison Ford seems to be quite passionate about the project. He loves this character and wants to do it justice, and that can be quite contagious. But with that being said, I didn't really like this movie. I don't hate it, I just really disagree with a lot of the choices that were made. The movie is about Indiana Jones retiring from being a professor of archaeology, but then his goddaughter Helena Shaw shows up to inquire about an artifact that he recovered with her father back in 1944. She is interested in recovering the artifact to have her claim to fame, her fortune and glory, if you will, but then it is revealed that not only is she after the artifact, but also a group of Nazis. Then begins their adventure. This movie really fails to capture that Spielberg magic and fun of the original Indiana Jones movies. Indiana Jones in this is an old, disgruntled man fed up with life with nothing to live for. The movie feels very dull most of the time and just kinda gets boring, with a depressing tone. The side characters are only there to belittle the main character and prop themselves up to be the best things since sliced bread. The movie feels bloated with a 2-hour and 20-minute runtime, mainly consisting of chase sequences. The whole movie is ultimately one long chase. Kind of reminds me of another movie that was one long chase that decided to take an old hero and make them into a sad, pathetic loser, only to prop up a younger female character that was basically a carbon copy of the old hero. None of the action is very memorable or inventive. There is an over-reliance on CGI. Even though I know they did a lot of stuff practically, the use of CGI is super noticeable and it takes you right out of the movie.
Nobody's gonna believe it.
I found the villains to be one note and not very interesting. Everybody here is giving a good performance. My issue comes more with the writing and how characters are presented. Harrison Ford gave a phenomenal performance, even though I didn't like the direction they took the character of Indiana Jones. And the music by John Williams is incredible like always. Definitely the best part. It's really hard to talk about the problems I have with this movie without getting into spoilers. So, spoiler warning, if you have not seen Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, I would stop watching this or skip to this point in the video. Are they gone? Okay, cool. My biggest complaint I have with this movie is the tone. Indiana Jones has always had an upbeat, adventurous feeling, and in this movie we find Indiana Jones in a small, pathetic apartment. We are shown he is an angry old man fed up with life in the middle of a divorce. No one seems to respect him, he is jaded and shown to have become a heavy drinker. Throughout the movie, innocent people are killed left and right by the bad guys. Indiana Jones is mistaken for murdering his colleagues at the college. Later on in the movie, we learn that Mutt Williams, Indiana Jones' son from Crystal Skull, went off to war and got killed, which ended up with Indy and Marion getting divorced and him becoming depressed. What a fantastic tone setter for your adventure movie. Now, the movie begins with an opener like all Indiana Jones films, this one taking place in 1944, showing how Indy and Helena's father, Basil Shaw, got a hold of the Antikythera, Archimedes' dial, the MacGuffin for the movie. Now, it being set in 1944 opposed to 1969, where most of the movie takes place, they made the decision to de-age Harrison Ford for the 25-minute sequence. Yeah. Now, the minute he started talking, it was a bit distracting. 1, because his face was CGI, and 2, old Harrison Ford's voice was coming out of young Harrison Ford.
You want to stop for a little lie down?
Now, the de-aging went from looking obvious to looking decent, but it depended from shot to shot. This entire sequence takes place at night, which was probably intended to help hide the CGI, but I will say a lot of it didn't really look that good. And I know that because I've seen it done better. There is a scene of him running on top of the train with a wide shot, and it looks like a CGI'd rubber man running on a CGI'd train with a CGI'd background. It just really looked fake. Now, this whole train sequence just feels like overkill. Like, we need to have Indiana Jones back in the 40s, and we need to have him be fighting Nazis, and we need to have religious artifacts. So let's just have a train full of Nazis and as many religious artifacts as you can put in there. And like I said, this part is 25 minutes long, and it really doesn't need to be that long. And I don't know, call me old-fashioned, fashion, but just cast a younger guy to play the 1944 scene, or just don't have the younger scene, and instead have an opener with old Indiana Jones, so it looks real, because I just don't like looking at CGI Harrison Ford. Now, it's not the worst thing in the world. It just feels like they're trying to recapture what you got out of the old films, but I would rather them just focus on the story with old Jones than doing kind of a nostalgia back to the past type bit with younger Jones. I just don't think it was needed. Also, I would like to mention that the villain of the movie, Voller, takes a hit on the train that was so violent and so fast that there was no way he would have survived. He gets hit in the head by a water spout on the side of the train going like 100 miles an hour, and it doesn't rip his head off of his shoulders. Like, I thought there was going to be some magical explanation to why he doesn't look like he's aged and how he was able to survive getting hit like that, but no, they just don't even talk about it. How old is he even supposed to be in that scene? So in the present day of the movie, Indy is retiring and is visited by Helena. Helena is looking for the Antikythera, well, at least half of it that Indiana Jones has in his possession. We also see that Voller is now a NASA scientist and is also trying to get a hold of the Antikythera. Now, this whole part of the movie with Helena trying to convince Jones to go on one last adventure, only for him to get captured by CIA Nazis and then have to escape them, was my favorite part of the movie. Things were tense, the action was well put together, I love how he escaped on horseback, and I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought the setup was intriguing. The only thing I really didn't like is Indy's colleagues getting murdered. Sure, it adds to the severity of the situation, but the movie continues to kill innocent characters throughout in pretty brutal ways. It's just not really the tone I'm looking for in an Indiana Jones movie. Like, sure, the bad guys are Nazis, but in all the other movies, they don't really show too many innocent characters get killed. It just seems like a cheap way to make you hate the villains in this movie. After Indy escapes the Nazis, he meets up with Sala. Sala tells him that Helena is going to the city of Tangier to sell the half of the dial at an illegal artifact auction. He just happens to know people that know this. He drops Indy off at the airport and then tells him that he brought his passport, and I got excited. Because so far, Sala seemed to be the only happy, joyful person in Indiana Jones's life. But then Indy said,
"No, you need to stay behind. You're too joyful. I need to be a sad, depressed old man."
"Don't leave him. Take Sala with you. I can't stand this dour tone."
Helena Shaw!
At the start with Helena, I was liking her character. This young student of archaeology who's just kind of been a bookworm and wants to go out on an adventure with the great Indiana Jones. Indy feels like nobody respects him, and here comes along his goddaughter, who seems to have great admiration for him. Then she takes the dial and leaves him for dead, and then we get to Tangier and she just kept talking. I found Helena to be very annoying. She's just a know-it-all, demeaning, and would just steal the show. I swear there's more scenes of her talking and explaining things than Indiana Jones. And she does a lot of the action in the movie as well. And I don't expect to see Indiana Jones fighting everybody because he's 80 years old. But, like, still, give him his gun. Let him shoot some bad guys. Let him have some more action. Give him more agency in the movie, because he just feels so passive, like he doesn't want to be there. Because the only reason he's there is that he's been mistaken for murdering his colleagues, so he's trying to get Helena and the dial to go back to prove his innocence. Not because he has that sense of adventure and wants to go because he's Indiana Jones. No, because he has to go, or go to jail. Now, it's clear as day what they're trying to do with Helena Shaw. They're trying to make her just like Indiana Jones, but this time, a woman. Wow. Seriously, in this movie, she's able to do everything to progress the plot. She doesn't need Indiana Jones. She knows everything about the artifact, she knows where to go, and she knows how to fight. She's even a womanizer. I mean, a manonizer? What would you call that in reverse? Oh yeah, a whore. A femme fatale, if you will. They explain in the movie that she has memorized 7 diaries about the artifact from her father. Let me say that again. 7 diaries.
I wrote them down in my diary so that I wouldn't have to remember.
She's amazing in every way and gets them out of all the bad situations as Indiana Jones just sits there being a feeble old man.
How did you end up like this?
Shut the fuck up!
She even has her own short round. Teddy, oh my dear boy Teddy. I bet you forgot he was even in the movie. They are blatantly trying to recreate Indy and Short Round with these two, but they lack any of the fun, charismatic charisma that Short Round and Jones had. Like, I'm not even joking, it's the same setup. Teddy tried to rob Helena, just like how Short Round tried to rob Indy, and because of that, they became best friends. And nothing against the kid that plays Teddy, because I'm sure he's a fine young actor. They just didn't give him anything to do until the very end, which I'll get to. The only character trait that we receive about Teddy is that he's a pickpocket and wants to be a pilot, but he never uses his pickpocket skills to further the plot in any way. You would think if they set that up it would come into play, but it doesn't. And the same goes for Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I have nothing against her, because if you put any actor into the role of Helena, they would come off as incredibly obnoxious just because how the character is written. It had nothing to do with her performance. Now, the chase scene in Tangier, just like the opening of the movie, went on a little too long for my taste. They introduced this third-party element with this disgruntled gangster guy who was betrothed to Helena, which, you know, adds a little comedy to the scene, but it just ended up dragging it out. It doesn't help that most of the characters in this part want nothing to do with Indiana Jones, saying he's an old man and he's out of his league and he shouldn't be there. And it doesn't help that he comes off like he really doesn't want to be there either. Voller escapes with the dial and they're not able to catch him, but Helena knows where a clue is to tell them where to find the other half of the dial, because she memorized 7 diaries of information on the subject. They begrudgingly go together to get on a boat owned by Ronaldo, played by Antonio Banderas, an old friend of Indiana Jones. Thank God, finally another happy character who's happy to see Indiana Jones and he gets brutally murdered in the very next scene. What the fuck? And before that, we get a scene of Indy talking about his dead son. Oh, what fun. So in this movie, they reveal that Mutt Williams died in the Vietnam War. Now, I get they didn't want to have Shia LaBeouf in this movie because he's become quite controversial. But like, you could have said,
Oh yeah, my son owns a motorcycle shop in another state.
or,
He's living with his wife in Canada.
or,
He's doing something else.
instead we got,
Yeah, he was fucking killed by the Viet Cong in the war, and it ruined my marriage. And now I'm depressed and an alcoholic.
that's so sad and miserable, and that's like the tone of the movie. It's just depressing. And that's not what I want from an Indiana Jones movie. Now, after that scene, they dive into the water to get the clue they need, which was a pretty cool sequence. I liked it quite a bit. Indiana Jones movies always have some kind of creepy crawly, and this one they decided to use eels, which I thought was a fun take on it, even though they were just CGI. But before they get back to the surface, the Nazis magically teleport in on their own boat and hold them hostage and demand them to translate the tablet they found. Indy refuses, and they kill Ronaldo. Then Helena goes, haha, I don't want to die, and tells them everything they need to know, even though they don't know how to read the tablet. She could have told them anything, and how are they supposed to know if she's lying or not? But instead of coming up with some bullshit story, she just tells them what it actually says. Then they escape with some dynamite they set up earlier, and she cracks a joke, and then Indy says,
My friend was just murdered. Why are you making a funny?
oh, what fun adventure! Let's talk about the villains real quick. I found them to be one-dimensional and cartoonish, but not in a fun way. Voller is not nearly as interesting or complex as Belloc, nor cartoonishly evil as Mola Ram. And you don't really know his motivations until the very end of the movie, and they're just so insane that it's impossible to get behind any of it. Mads Mikkelsen and Bode Holbrook both give good performances, but they really had nothing to do, besides the ability to use a pair of binoculars to figure out a direction a boat is going, and are able to teleport wherever the plot needs them to be. That part was just insane.
They're not going east. They're going west.
They're trying to get away from you because you just tried to kill them. How do you know that they're going to keep going west? Jones and crew go to Sicily to find the grave of Archimedes, but oh no, Teddy gets captured by Voller because he knew exactly where they were going and just teleported there. And Indy says to Helena,
Don't worry, they won't hurt the kid.
how do you know that? So far they've killed every innocent person they've come across in the movie. I'd be very worried for his safety. And then they just find the other half of the dial. Like there's just one obstacle, and that being a puzzle that Indiana Jones solves. It's the only puzzle he solves in the whole movie, and it's just water displacement. There must have been another part to this because you can clearly see in the trailer that there's something to do with a boulder, but it's just not in the movie, so them finding the dial is like super easy. But then Voller shows up, and oh no, they're surrounded by men with guns. If only the main character had a gun, like he had in every other movie, maybe then he wouldn't be able to be put in these bad situations. Anyway, they shoot him in the collarbone. Voller puts the two pieces of the dial together, and then we enter the third act, which is where the movie just falls apart. Voller takes the injured Indiana Jones with him to explain his master plan, which is to use the dial to find a fissure in time to go back to 1939 Germany to kill Adolf Hitler and take command of the German army to win World War II. Man, I missed the aliens. I fucking hate time travel. It's one of my biggest pet peeves in fiction. It's so fucking stupid. It's just the easiest way out of writing yourself into a corner. Now, to the movie's credit, I think they handled it okay compared to other movies, but still, its inclusion alone bothers me, and that's more of a personal thing. So they get on a plane, and then Helena and Teddy show up to save Indy. Earlier in the movie, we're shown that Teddy wants to be a pilot, and Helena asks if he can fly a particular type of plane. And he says, "I've never flown that type of plane." And then she says, "You've never flown any plane." And my brain wanted to die. Despite never flying a plane, Teddy is able to start and take off after the Germans in a torrential downpour in a storm with tons of turbulence and fly through a time portal. First time flying a plane. That's pretty impressive. Or just fucking stupid. Helena rides a motorcycle and hitches a ride on the German plane before it takes off. On board the plane, Indy tells Voller he forgot about continental drift in his calculations, and if they go through the portal, they could end up anywhere. They go through the portal, and Voller is convinced that they are in 1939, only to realize that they have been transported back to 214 BC during the Battle of Syracuse. They idiotically fly so low to the battle that they get shot out of the sky by the Roman army and fucking die. But before that, Helena and Jones parachute out of the plane, and they learn that Archimedes created the dial to bring people from the future to help with the Battle of Syracuse. So the whole part about continental drift is bullshit, because if anyone goes through that portal, they will end up at that point in time, every time. Indiana Jones is still bleeding and somehow not dead yet, even though nobody has attended his wound. He asks to be left in the past, not because he wants to witness history with his fascination with historical events. No, because he believes that there's nothing left for him back in his time, and he wants to stay there and fucking die. Remind you of anybody?
I came to this island to die.
Helena said, "I can't let you do that," and punches Jones so hard that she knocks him out, and we cut to black. And I'm not even joking, people in the audience fucking cheered after that. Indy wakes up in his pathetic apartment and is sad and grumpy that he wasn't allowed to stay in the past and die. Helena says, "Your place is here," and the saddest I've ever heard Indiana Jones, he says, "For who?" And then Marion shows up. Then Helena looks right at the camera and says, "I know how to solve every problem." She doesn't actually do that, but she might as well have. Marion and Indy recreate the "Where Does It Hurt" scene from Raiders, and then they kiss, and the movie ends with a Looney Tunes transition, just like Mandalorian Season 3. They never resolved the fact that Indy was mistaken for murdering his colleagues. Helena, as far as I know, is still gonna sell the dial. There was never a point in the story where she changed her mind. And that's Dial of Destiny, baby. Overall, I'm sure you can tell I don't like this. For some reason, they decided they wanted Indiana Jones to be sad and depressed for this movie, and that's just not what I want to see. I've seen some people say that they love how this movie ends because Indy gets a happy ending, but Crystal Skull ended with him getting married and united with his son, and he was happy. And this ends with him reunited with Marion, but their son is dead and they're starting to heal. But I found that to be depressing. Like, I want to have that feeling of adventure. I don't want to be depressed. I don't know what Helena's arc was in this movie. She wants to pay off her debts, but then she wants to save Indy, and then what? Is she now a true archaeologist who wants to put the dial in a museum? Or is she going to still try to sell it? Helena in general was just annoying. Her dialogue was so demeaning, and it's not like she got some kind of comeuppance that changed her way of thinking. She almost got rewarded for being the way that she is. And the movie plays it off like, yeah, she's perfectly fine for doing what she did. Now, if Disney's Lucasfilm tries to make a Helena Shaw movie, best of luck to them. I definitely won't watch it, but 5 people cheered when she punched an old man, so I mean, you got some kind of audience there. The MacGuffin for the movie really isn't that interesting, especially the fact that you see what it is from the very start and there's no mystery as to what it is or what it does. Here's half a thing, and here's what it does if you have the whole thing. And it doesn't do anything besides point you in the direction where you need to go. Like at the end of the movie, we have a time portal and a storm. It's just there. Like the dial didn't make the thing, anything, it's just pointing at it. Like, any random person could fly into that portal without the dial and still be able to be transported to the past. So the artifact doesn't have any supernatural power, it's just a GPS. And it's crazy to me the parallels to this and the sequel trilogy. They almost exactly redo what they did with Han Solo with Indiana Jones. Two people got married, something happened to their son, and they separated. And what's crazy to me is a lot of the problems I have with this movie is what I hear people complain about with Crystal Skull. I don't want to see old Indiana Jones. I don't want to see a young character who's acting like they're going to replace him. But in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Indiana Jones is still Indiana Jones.
Put your hands down, will you? You're embarrassing us.
He's not depressed and jaded and done with life. He's still that adventurer that I love. And Mutt doesn't steal the show. He was a sidekick.
What are you looking at, Daddy-O?
Overall, I wouldn't recommend this. It's just not what I want out of an Indiana Jones movie. It's just sad, depressing, and mediocre. And that really sucks, especially being the last Indiana Jones movie we'll get with Harrison Ford. I wasn't excited about this movie, but I'm very disappointed with what I got. They dropped the ball. One positive I can say is that it's made me like Crystal Skull more. Never thought I'd say that. And who knows, maybe years from now I'll come to like this movie like I have with Crystal Skull. Only time will tell. But for now, no, I wouldn't recommend watching it. But with that being said, thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys later. I'm gonna go find James Mangold and throw him out the windshield of the truck.